Hi, this is Phil from the Linux Mint Forums, member PhD21. One of the questions today that came up, actually over the past few days, from one of the members, they just got a USB external backup drive, and they wanted to install some backup software and run that, and they were concerned that because the backup drive offered setup configuration, software for setting it up and stuff like that for Windows and Macintosh, but it didn't say anything about Linux, and so they were concerned if the drive would work properly. It will. The backup drives should work with any computer operating system, whether it's Windows, Microsoft Windows, or Macintosh, or Linux, and they normally come formatted with a Microsoft, NTFS file system, which allows for large hard drives or large backup drives, and this particular drive, a Samsung SSDT5, which is one of these newer solid-state drives. Excellent choice, by the way. 1 terabyte drive. It apparently came with file system format called EXFAT, and another Microsoft proprietary file system. I brought up the drive on my screen here on Amazon.com. It's a nice small. It's a really good choice for a backup drive. It's 1 terabyte. It's solid state, which means there's no moving parts, which means it'll last a long time. And although normally most USB external drives, most drives period, come with the Microsoft NTFS file system, apparently this one came with a formatted as an extended FAT, what they call EXFAT file system, which should also work on any operating system like Linux or Microsoft, or Microsoft, obviously Microsoft Windows, and Macintosh as well. Linux can access most drives no matter what their format is. Even Macintosh drives, which have a unique file system format. All drives have to have a file system on it in order for the computer operating system to save files to it and folders and stuff like that. In Linux Mint in particular, and I'm using Linux Mint Cinnamon for this tutorial. There are 4 wonderful editions of Linux Mint: Cinnamon, Mate, XFCE, and KDE. For this tutorial, I'm using Linux Mint 18.3 Cinnamon because that's what the user is using, and it can already access Microsoft drives that are formatted with NTFS or FAT30, what they call FAT32. I'm not sure if it comes already prepared to run the extended FAT file system, the exFAT file system, but there is in Linux Mint anyway, there's different ways to install software. The Software Manager or the Synaptic Package Manager. I usually use the Synaptic Package Manager, but both work. Now, if you bring up the Synaptic Package Manager, you can search for various types of software or whatever. In this case, I'm searching for a file system, and I'm going to type in exFAT to see if that's installed. And as you can see, there are two packages directly related to the exFAT file system, exFAT-fuse and exFAT-utils. You just click on one, right-click it, and mark it for installation, and install them both. But just to show you, that if there's a file system like you have a Macintosh drive or something like that and you wanted to access it, you can do that too. I'm scrolling through here by installing the HFS programs, which are for Apple computers and the Mac OS and stuff like that. Maybe even some of the iPhone, or iPad and stuff like that. You may want to install these to be able to access those storage drives for those. But anyway, in this case though, exFAT is all you need to install. And if you install a file system driver, you want to restart your computer before you try to access any drive with that. I didn't happen to have any drives that use the exFAT file system. I do have a couple USB external backup drives, because everybody who has a computer knows that you should be backing up your computer, because the internal hard drives on the computers are going to wear out. Maybe a power outage or something could happen, and you'd lose everything that's on there. So one of the ways to protect yourself is to copy anything important, to back up. And you could back up to USB external drives, and the solid state drives are a better choice. You can back up to DVDs or Blu-ray discs and stuff like that too, or USB sticks for that matter. Anyway, so I had a 8 gigabyte USB stick, which I formatted with the exFAT file system for this tutorial. And it works fine. But while you can also install those packages, the extended FAT, the exFAT packages, either from the software manager or Synaptic Package Manager, or from the console terminal. And the instructions for that are on the Linux Mint forum, which I will link to. Now, this is a relatively new user to Linux, and this year, and they wanted to use a software package called Aptik to back up their Linux system to the external drive. Of course, you have to install Aptik. That is not in the software manager, or at least it wasn't. And that's easy to do. You just go to any search engine and you search for Aptik, and APTIK, and there'll be different options for that. I will also put a link to that on on my YouTube channel with this video. It's an excellent software package. Once you've installed Linux Mint and you've changed your backgrounds, you've installed different software and stuff like that, Aptik makes it simple to back up all the software you installed, regardless of how you installed it, which includes personal package archives, PPAs, and any customizations. You can also back up the entire what they call the home folder, where you've got all your documents, your music, your pictures and videos and stuff like that. Now you can install Aptik using their own PPA, and the instructions are on the screen right now. Or you can download deb files. These are similar to Microsoft Windows exe files, where you can just double click them to install them. And if you install it via their PPA, it will keep that software updated. That's the method I would recommend. Anyway, the member had already installed Aptik, but was not able to successfully back up to his new solid-state external drive. And myself and others were giving instructions on how to do various things using the file manager. And the user seemed to have some trouble understanding what the file manager is and how to use it. In Microsoft Windows, the file manager used to be called Explorer. And in Linux Mint, the file managers have different names depending on what version of them. A file manager is literally that. It's a program to help you manage the files and folders on your system, to explore your system. Each version of Linux Mint has their own file manager already installed, and they're really good. You can install other file managers. Pardon me. As I said before, I'm in Linux Mint Cinnamon 18.3. In Linux Mint Cinnamon, their default file manager is called Files, and it's down. It's normally in the system tray on the left side, and it looks like it has a folder as an icon. The actual program name is called Nemo, so people refer to it as Files or Nemo. It's also available in the menu. If you go to All Applications, scroll down, you'll see Files. And if you right-click that, you can add that to your panel or to your desktop, or you could just click it to run it, or even to your favorites over here. Normally it's already in the system tray, and you can just click that to bring up the file manager, Nemo. Now you can have other file managers installed. I have another newer Linux file manager, actually created by the people who created the Aptik backup program, and it's called Polo. It's pretty nice. I normally use Linux Mint KDE, and its file manager is called Dolphin. So I have that installed as well. But there's a lot of different kinds, and but the default file manager for Cinnamon is pretty nice. It's called Nemo, and you can actually enhance it in different ways. So if you click the file manager, it'll pop up, and it usually pops up into your home folder, which is where you've got your documents, your pictures, your music, your videos. In my case, I've got a whole bunch of other folders for different reasons, but and on the left side are the main folders. There's also a section called Bookmarks. That's very handy because you can make quick links to other folders that like subfolders and stuff like that you may use. And it's adjustable. You can resize it a little bit. Underneath that is a section called Devices. These are normally all the other drives other than the main drive that you booted into. That can include CD, DVD, Blu-ray drives. It can also include other partitions on any other drives that are currently connected. I have three drives connected right now. I have a solid state drive, that internal. I have another regular drive connected, and I've got a USB external drive, which I have given it a name. It's a 1 terabyte regular mechanical platter driven drive, and its name is gray-NTFS because it's gray in color. And I have two of them. One of them's blue, one of them's gray, so I just called it that. I also, as I mentioned earlier, I have a USB stick which I formatted with the extended file system, the exFAT file system, just to show that you can easily access that in Linux. But my and I just clicked on my USB 1 terabyte external drive to show you that it's there. Now, I've been using Aptik for years. There's different backup programs. There's a few different kinds. I recommend highly that people make image backups using a drive and partition imaging program like CloneZilla Live, which literally backs up everything and creates a compressed image of it, and then if something does happen, you can just restore the that image. It's pretty fast to do that. With an Aptik backup, you would have to reinstall Linux Mint from the original installation DVD or USB stick, then install Aptik, run Aptik, and tell it to restore from the Aptik backup, which works great, by the way. But I do both. I not only back up using Aptik, I also back up using a drive imaging application like CloneZilla Live, which is free. It's very much like a program that a lot of people in Microsoft Windows use called Norton Ghost, only this is called CloneZilla Live, and it can back up Windows drives and or partitions and Linux partitions all at the same time. I think it can even back up Macintosh partitions as long as the Macintosh computer is Intel based. It's a great program, and but that's for a different topic. Now, getting back to the file manager, the file manager allows you to be able to browse, to explore your computer, to see what kind of files are on your system. If you go to music and there's music files in there, it'll list them. If you go to videos, it'll list them. If you double click on a file, in some system it's set up for single click or double click, it'll launch whatever programs related to that type of file. If it's a music file, it'll launch a program to do that. If it's a picture, then it'll bring up an image or a picture related program. If it's a video, then it'll bring up a video related program. Now, what brought this all up was I suggested to the user, the Linux Mint member, that on the new drive, the extended fat drive, should create a folder called Aptik, where you can tell the Aptik program to use that folder for backing everything up. Otherwise, if you just tell it to go to that drive, it'll put a whole bunch of files and folders in the root, what they call the root or parent folder, and that's kind of messy. But it's so simple to create a folder, pretty much anywhere. You click on wherever you want to create a new folder. You can just right-click and say Create New Folder, or you can click Edit. File, and then click Create New Folder. There's even a keyboard shortcut, Shift Control N. It's easy just to right-click and say Create New Folder, and it pops up and it's automatically enters in an untitled folder name. Give it a name. In this case, I use Aptik for Aptik backups. Of course, you could call it whatever you want. You could call it Aptik-backups. Okay, that's how easy it is to create a new folder. Now, file managers can do much more than just copy and move files or create new folders or edit a text file and stuff like that. I'm not going to go into all that right now. But before you can access a drive, the drive has to be mounted. Now, some Linux Mint systems, as soon as you attach a drive, it's gonna pop up and automatically mount it. If it's already connected when you boot up, it might automatically mount it. If not, you can mount it by clicking the button in the file manager right there. It looks like a little triangle. You can mount and unmount a drive that way. There's also, in the system tray, a device notifier icon, sometimes called removable drives. You can click that and also mount different drives and or their partitions by clicking this little triangular icon. Now, if I were to unplug, you're supposed to unmount them before you unplug them. Now I just click this and to unmount the little USB stick with the exFAT file system on it, and now it's not listed in my file manager anymore. And I used the removable drives, also known as a device notifier icon, to do that. And you can see it's not listed anymore. Now it's safe to remove that USB. Sometimes it'll make a noise, sometimes it won't. Now I'm going to plug it back in. It's going to take a few seconds. It normally pops up and says something. In this case, it did. What do you want to do? Okay. I can open it in the file manager. I could just click cancel. Sometimes, depending on what it is, if it's a CD or a DVD or something like that, it'll come up and say, "Do you want to play it in a particular in a player?" In this case, I already have the file manager open, and you can see it automatically mounted it. Now, if I click on it, that will mount it. Whether it was mounted or not, if I click on it, it will mount it. There is another option. If you're going to have a USB stick or a USB drive or a partition on a different internal hard drive that you're going to mount, that you want available most of the time, there's an excellent program called Disks that's usually already installed, and you can tell it that you have a particular drive that you want to have mounted, or a particular partition, like if you're dual booting Microsoft Windows or even a Macintosh with Linux Mint, and you have files and folders and stuff like that on a different partition on a drive, you can click on that drive and then click a partition. And in this case, I have an NTFS partition on another drive, which I share with different operating systems I boot with. And I want that to always be available. Well, I can just click on the drive. Like in this case, my USB external drive. Okay, it's only got one partition. I'm using the whole 1 terabyte, 1,000 gigabytes. It's formatted with an NTFS partition. And I'm going to use the whole thing. I want to be able to use the whole thing all the time for whatever I feel like doing. Backing up, copying, whatever. So if I click on the drive, click on the partition, there's a little gear icon here that's for additional partition options. If you click on that and you select Edit Mount Options, here's where I can tell the Linux Mint system that I want this drive, whenever it's attached, to automatically be available without having to click anything or having to click a triangle in the device notifier. And the way you do that is you go into the mount options, you turn off the auto. I know this sounds counterintuitive, but click the top button, which will either say automatic mount options or session options. Click that top button to off. Underneath that, click Mount at Startup. Make sure Show and User Interface is on. Below that, there's an option to change the identifier, Identify As. As you can see, all drives get a cryptic reference ID called UUID number, and that's kind of hard to recognize what that represents. But if you label the drive, or the drive already has a label on it that is more easily understood, you can select it. And in this case, I want the drive identified in file managers and every other program by the label. So I go down to label and I click that, which is a lot better than that cryptic number. Then I just click OK. It's going to ask me for my password. I give it that. From now on, whenever I reboot, this drive will be available, and I won't have to do anything to it. That's how simple it is to make a drive always available. And even if it was a USB stick, I could do the same thing. I could click on a USB stick, click on the partition, the main partition. I can click the gear icon for additional properties. Edit the mount options. And I can make this now. In this particular case, I don't want that USB stick always mounted. Anyway, that's how to use the disks program. To always have any particular drive and or a partition of that drive available in Linux Mint. Okay, now that the drive is connected, it's available. As I've already shown you, you can access the drive by clicking on it in the file manager. Whatever drive it is. As you can see, I have multiple drives with multiple partitions on them, and I can access any one of them. And some have Linux file systems on them. Some have the NTFS file system. Obviously, the one has an extended FAT file system on it. Okay, I've already shown you how to create a folder. Now, let's go into Aptik. And it's called Aptik GTK. Now, Aptik requires super user privileges, which just means you have to enter your main password to use it. So you do that. And this is the newest version. I highly recommend everybody use it. And one of the first things it asks is, where are you going to back up to? Well, it's a good idea to back up to your USB external drive. And again, in addition to the operating system having their own file managers, when certain applications also have built-in what they call an open file dialog, which is a lot like a file manager. So when you click select or open, pardon me, it's going to open up basically a file browser. It's actually called an open file dialog, and you can browse to wherever your USB external drive is. Now, it may be on the left here, or you may have to click other locations. Now, my 1 terabyte USB external drive, I had to click other locations, and it showed up as gray NTFS. Now, you can also create a folder normally this way. If there's an option to create a folder in here, you could click that and type in Aptik. And you notice it shows up here on the top. I'm already in it. Then I just click open, and you can see that now I have the correct backup location where I want my Aptik backups to show up. I could have picked any of those drives. For new users, you have choices here. You can back up or restore. There are easy, advanced, and expert. If you're new to Linux or you're not very comfortable with computers, stick with the easy option. Then you click on backup. Okay, these are the options for the Aptik backup program. I would recommend, it's got everything listed. Now the home folder, which is that folder with documents, downloads, music, videos, and pictures and stuff like that. I back that up separately using I back up the whole drive and the partitions using a CloneZilla Live. I make image backups, which includes the entire home folder. My home folder has literally it could have 50 gigabytes or more of downloads and videos and stuff like that. That's I don't normally back up my home folder in Aptik, but that's up to you. I also use another program to sync, which I run almost daily, if not daily, like every other day, called Free File Sync or Lucky Backup, which just backs up anything that's changed in the past, since I last backed up, and it literally just copies files and folders and stuff like that to the drive as well. Anyway, as far as Aptik goes, you can leave the default options. I would recommend that on the right side under installed software that you also click include non-native packages, and that's it. I mean, unless you're like me and you don't want the home folder backed up because you're backing that up in some other way, you can just click back up all items and it starts working. So anyway, there's my tutorial on for this member in Linux Mint on what a file manager is, how to install Aptik and use Aptik. And I hope you find that useful. And everyone have a great day.